There was a quiet conversation not long ago, one that almost no one expected to matter. It did not happen in a crowded place, nor was it filled with loud emotions. It unfolded in the stillness of an ordinary moment, where guarded hearts often speak more honestly than they ever do in public. And in that conversation, your name returned. Not because someone was forced to mention you. Not because anyone was trying to reopen old wounds. But because something within the silence had become impossible to ignore. You may have wondered why certain answers never arrived, why doors seemed to remain closed even after your sincere prayers, why your kindness appeared to disappear without acknowledgement. Yet while you questioned the silence, something was quietly changing beyond your sight. Someone remembered. Someone reflected. Someone finally spoke words that had been held back for far too long. Before I reveal why those words carried such unexpected weight, I want you to understand something. Nothing meaningful is ever wasted. Not the tears you never allowed others to see. Not the prayers whispered after everyone else had gone to sleep. Not the quiet strength you carried when no one offered encouragement. Every act of grace leaves a mark, even when it seems invisible. And that unseen mark has begun touching hearts you believed had forgotten. If this message resonates with you, hold on to it for a little longer. Sometimes the greatest turning points begin with conversations no one else even notices. The room where this conversation happened felt unusually calm. Outside, life continued as it always had. But inside, the atmosphere carried a different weight. There were pauses between sentences. Thoughtful glances. Moments when neither person knew exactly how to express what had been sitting inside their heart for so long. One voice quietly asked a question. What do you truly think now? The answer did not come immediately. Because honest answers rarely arrive in haste. Instead, there was reflection. Memories surfaced. Not dramatic memories. Simple ones. Small moments that had once seemed insignificant. Your patience. Your quiet dignity. The way you chose compassion instead of resentment. The consistency of your heart when circumstances gave you every reason to become bitter. These were not forgotten after all. They had simply been understood too late. Yet that was not the moment that changed everything. Something even more unexpected happened next. As the conversation continued, another realization slowly emerged. It became clear that assumptions had quietly replaced understanding. Distance had been mistaken for indifference. Silence had been mistaken for weakness. Waiting had been mistaken for giving up. But none of those assumptions reflected the truth. And once one misunderstanding was questioned, others began to unravel as well. This is why patience often carries hidden rewards. While people believe nothing is happening, hearts are learning lessons they could not have accepted any other way. Your journey has never been about convincing everyone to recognize your worth. It has been about remaining true to who you are, even when recognition came slowly. That quiet faith has spoken louder than words ever could. There is wisdom in waiting that many never discover. Waiting teaches compassion. Waiting softens pride. Waiting reveals character. And without realizing it, your season of waiting has become part of someone else's awakening. If you have ever felt overlooked. If you have wondered whether your quiet sacrifices mattered. Know this. Hearts often need time before they recognize what has always been standing faithfully before them. The conversation continued. The questions became deeper. The silence between sentences grew even longer. Then someone gently mentioned something that had not been spoken aloud for a very long time. The room became completely still. Eyes lowered. A quiet breath filled the space. Because the next truth was far more significant than either person expected. And once those words were spoken, nothing about the future could remain exactly the same. But what those words revealed has not yet been fully understood. The silence lingered for a few moments, not because anyone had nothing to say, but because the truth has a way of asking for stillness before it can be received. One gentle voice finally broke the quiet. "It wasn't what I believed before." Those few words carried more weight than anyone in the room expected. They were not spoken with regret alone. They were spoken with clarity, clarity that only comes after long reflection, unexpected lessons, and the quiet work of the heart. For so long, assumptions had filled the spaces where honest conversations should have lived. People believed they understood the whole story. They thought they knew your intentions. They believed your silence meant distance, when in reality it often meant wisdom. They mistook your patience for weakness, when it had always been one of your greatest strengths. Sometimes the deepest misunderstandings are not created by harsh words. They are created by the absence of truthful ones. That is why this conversation mattered far more than anyone first realized. It became a moment where old conclusions quietly lost their power. One memory led to another. Someone recalled a time when you chose kindness instead of proving yourself right. Another remembered how you remained respectful, even when your own heart was carrying disappointment. These memories had been sitting quietly beneath the surface for a long time. Now they were finally being seen through different eyes. If this sounds familiar to you, perhaps you have experienced seasons where your character spoke louder than your voice ever could. Those seasons are never empty. They prepare hearts to recognize what they once overlooked. Yet what happened next was never meant to be rushed. The conversation shifted. Instead of speaking only about the past, they began wondering about the future. Not with fear. Not with pressure. But with quiet hope. What if we misunderstood someone who deserved more grace? The question remained in the air. No one answered immediately. Because everyone present felt its meaning. Grace has a remarkable way of opening doors that pride keeps closed. And somewhere beyond what could be seen, your quiet prayers were already meeting moments like this. You may not have witnessed this exchange. You may never know every word that was spoken. But not every blessing arrives through public announcements. Some begin in whispered conversations. Some begin when hearts choose humility instead of certainty. Some begin when people become willing to admit that they may have seen only part of the picture. This was becoming one of those moments. Still, the most meaningful realization had not yet appeared. There was one final memory that no one had mentioned. At first, it seemed too small to matter. Just an ordinary moment. An ordinary act. Something you likely forgot shortly after it happened. But someone else never forgot. It quietly remained in their heart all this time. Without realizing it, that single moment became the thread connecting everything they were now beginning to understand. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the memory they were about to share did not simply change the conversation. It changed how they began to see you. The room grew silent once again. A gentle smile appeared where uncertainty had once lived. Then one person leaned forward, took a slow breath, and prepared to reveal the one moment that had stayed with them all along. For a moment, no one spoke. The memory seemed almost too ordinary to carry such significance. Yet the heart often treasures moments that the mind forgets. Then, quietly, the story was shared. It was not about a grand gesture. It was not about dramatic words or a life-changing event. It was about a simple act of kindness, one you offered without expecting recognition. You may not even remember it now. Perhaps it was the way you listened when someone needed understanding instead of advice. Perhaps it was the patience you showed when others were frustrated. Or perhaps it was the quiet grace you carried during a season when your own heart was heavy. Whatever it was, it remained alive in someone's memory. They admitted something they had never said before. I didn't understand what that meant back then. Those words settled gently into the room. Not with sadness, but with gratitude. Sometimes wisdom arrives only after time has softened pride. Sometimes people cannot fully appreciate goodness until life teaches them how rare it truly is. Your quiet character had become clearer with every passing season. Not because you changed who you were, but because their perspective finally did. If you have ever wondered whether goodness matters in a world that often rewards louder voices, hear this truth. Gentleness leaves footprints that last far longer than arguments. Integrity continues speaking long after conversations have ended. And a peaceful heart often reaches places that force never can. That is why your journey has never been in vain. Even during the moments when you believed no one noticed, something meaningful was taking root. The conversation grew warmer. The atmosphere no longer carried uncertainty. Instead, it carried reflection. Someone softly said, "Maybe we've been looking at everything through the wrong window." No one disagreed. Because once a heart begins seeing with compassion, old judgments become difficult to defend. One by one, they began connecting moments that had once seemed unrelated. The patience you showed. The respect you continued to offer. The quiet strength you displayed without asking for applause. Together, those moments formed a picture they had never fully seen before. And with that new understanding came another realization. This was not simply about remembering you. It was about recognizing the kind of peace your presence had quietly brought into their lives. Peace is often noticed only after it is missing. That realization settled deeply within them. If this message resonates with you, remember that your value has never depended on how quickly others recognized it. Some truths require time before they are fully embraced. Some hearts must walk a longer road before they understand what has been waiting for them all along. But that was not the moment that changed everything. Just as the conversation seemed ready to end, someone reached for something that had been sitting nearby. It was small. Almost forgotten. No one expected it to matter. Yet the instant it came into view, every voice in the room fell silent. Because that single reminder connected the past to the present in a way no one could have imagined. One thoughtful glance was exchanged. A quiet breath followed. And then someone whispered, "I think this explains everything." But what they were looking at, and why it carried such unexpected meaning, was only about to be revealed. The object rested quietly where it had been left, unnoticed for far longer than anyone realized. It was not valuable because of what it was. It was valuable because of what it represented. For a long moment, no one reached for it. It seemed as though everyone understood that once its meaning was spoken aloud, there would be no returning to the old way of thinking. Finally, someone picked it up with gentle hands. A faint smile appeared, not the smile of certainty, but the smile that comes when scattered pieces of a story suddenly begin to fit together. "I remember this day," one voice said softly. "It didn't seem important then." Another person nodded. None of us understood what we were seeing. The room became still again. Not with discomfort, but with quiet reflection. How many moments in life pass unnoticed simply because we are looking for something louder? How often does genuine kindness arrive without asking to be admired? And how many blessings begin so quietly that they are only recognized much later? The answers were unfolding without anyone needing to force them. Your name returned once more. This time, it was spoken differently. Not as a question. Not as a memory. But with a quiet respect that had not been present before. That change was impossible to ignore. It did not happen because someone argued on your behalf. It happened because time had revealed what hurried opinions could not. Character has a gentle way of revealing itself. It asks for patience. It waits without demanding attention. And when people finally see it clearly, they often wonder how they missed it for so long. If you have spent seasons feeling unseen, remember this. The deepest recognition often arrives long after the quiet work has been done. Seeds do not bloom the same day they are planted. Yet their growth continues, even beneath the surface where no one can see. Your journey has been much like that. While you focused on remaining faithful to your values, something unseen was taking shape in the hearts of others. The conversation became less about the past and more about possibility. "What happens now?" someone asked. It was a simple question. Yet no one answered immediately. Because the future is rarely changed by one dramatic moment. It is changed by many quiet decisions made with honesty. One person leaned back and said, "Perhaps we've been waiting for the wrong thing." Those words lingered. Everyone reflected on them. They realized they had been expecting perfect timing instead of meaningful growth. Yet true change rarely announces itself. It begins with understanding. Then comes humility. Then comes courage. And only after those steps does action become possible. This was one of those rare moments. Not because every answer had been found, but because hearts had become willing to ask better questions. If this message feels familiar, perhaps you have also experienced seasons where nothing appeared to move, while unseen changes were quietly taking place. Never underestimate those hidden seasons. They often prepare the greatest blessings with remarkable patience. Then something unexpected happened. A phone resting silently on the table lit up. No one had touched it. The screen displayed a single notification. It interrupted the conversation at exactly the right moment. The room grew completely silent. One person looked at the message, then slowly looked up. Their expression changed. Not with fear. Not with surprise alone. But with the unmistakable realization that this conversation had arrived just before an important decision was about to be made. And the words they quietly read next would change the direction of everything that followed. No one rushed to speak. The glow from the phone was soft, yet in that quiet room it seemed to draw every eye toward it. The message itself was not dramatic. There were no startling announcements. No urgent demands. Just a few thoughtful words that arrived at exactly the right time. One person read them silently, then looked around the room with an expression no one had seen before. It was the look of someone who suddenly realized that life had been offering gentle signs all along, but they had only now become willing to notice them. The timing. They whispered. It can't be ignored anymore. A peaceful silence followed. Not because everyone had the same opinion, but because each person sensed that something meaningful had just shifted. Sometimes answers do not arrive by changing the circumstances first. They arrive by changing the heart that is looking at those circumstances. That was what had happened here. The conversation had begun with uncertainty. Now it was filled with understanding. The room no longer felt heavy. It felt hopeful. One voice quietly admitted, "I kept waiting for proof, when what I really needed was perspective." Those words settled deeply into every heart present. Perspective has the power to transform old memories into new wisdom. Moments that once seemed ordinary begin revealing lessons that were hidden in plain sight. And that is often how healing begins. Not all at once. Not through one perfect conversation. But through a series of honest realizations that gently replace old assumptions with compassion. If you have carried unanswered questions, remember this. Not every silence is rejection. Sometimes silence is simply the space where understanding is still growing. Your patience has not been empty. Your quiet faith has not been unnoticed. The kindness you continued to offer, even when no immediate reward appeared, has been shaping more than you could ever see. The conversation slowly came to an end. No one felt the need to add unnecessary words. Everything important had already been planted. As they prepared to leave, someone paused at the doorway. Almost as if speaking more to themselves than anyone else, they said, "When we meet again, things cannot stay the way they were." No promises were made. No dramatic declarations followed. Only a quiet commitment to move forward with greater honesty, greater grace, and a clearer heart. That is how lasting change often begins. Not with noise, but with quiet decisions that are faithfully carried out one step at a time. If this message resonates with you, hold on to hope. Continue walking with patience. Continue choosing peace over bitterness. Continue believing that genuine character is never wasted. The chapters you cannot yet see are often being written during the seasons that feel the quietest. And one day, you may look back and realize that what seemed like a delay was actually the careful preparation for something far more meaningful than you imagined. For now, rest in this truth. The quiet conversation that brought your name back did more than reopen a memory. It opened hearts. And when hearts begin to change, new paths become possible. The next chapter has already begun, even if its first steps are still unfolding in silence.